So I couldn't find a tutorial that I actually liked what they did. So I'm going to just do my own. So basically I want to teach you how to use the blend option to kind of create a three-dimensional, almost like tubular line that you can then apply to text or pretty much any line you want. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the blend. So you're going to you're going to take your circle and you're going to create one circle, holding down the shift key to make sure that it's a perfect circle. This can be any size. The bigger you make it, the larger the tube will be. And the smaller you make it, the smaller it'll be. So depending on what size you make the circle will determine how thick that line is. Then we are going to, actually, I'm going to adjust the gradient first. So you're going to put a gradient on it, which is what makes it look three-dimensional. I have this gradient here, which I'm not that into. So I'm actually going to go to my swatches panel. I'm going to go down to my library on the bottom left and go down to where it says gradients. And I'm going to look at these different gradients. I was using the pastel ones, but I'm not that into pastel colors. So I'm going to check out these color harmonies. Okay, so these are a little bit deeper colors. I think I'll go with something like this. Right now, I'm going to zoom in on this circle because it's pretty tiny. Our gradient goes from top to bottom. So I actually want to change that too. I'm going to make it, I'm just going to actually put it at -45. And then I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a duplicate of it. So I'm holding down my option key or my alt key and I'm dragging, and I'm going to also hold down the shift key so that that is in a perfectly straight line as I drag it across my artboard. And now these are far away from each other, but I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to go down to where it says object and I'm going to go to blend and I'm going to make my blend. So what this does is it basically takes the first circle and the last circle and it changes it to go all the way across. Now, I'm actually going to show you something else. If I Command Z real quick and I make this circle a little bit smaller, I'm going to hold Alt and Shift at the same time. What's going to happen is if I select both of these and I go to blend again and make, my circles are going to go from larger to smaller. Now you can see all the different circles that go from one to the next. So I'm going to go back to my blend and go to where it says blend options. And I'm going to change this from smooth color to specified steps. And I'm going to put, well, you can go anywhere up to 1,000. So let's just give this a go and see how good that looks. Okay, so that gives us this really smooth line and a really nice gradient. Oh gosh, I'm like clicking everywhere right now. Okay, so I'm actually going to see if I can't make this circle a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go back to before I created my blend. I'm going to see if I can't taper this down all the way. And that's really small, but I kind of think it'll make a cool effect. So I'm going to go to Object, Blend again, Make, Object, Blend, Blend Options, and Specified Steps, 1,000. Okay, so now you can see it goes from like thick to thin. We've got our gradient, and it's like a kind of cool transition. So basically, the next thing you can do is you can take any line that you might have and you select that and this blend, and you go to Object, Blend, and you're going to go to where it says Replace Spine. What that does is it makes our blend follow that line that we created. Now, this is kind of making the gradient that we have kind of spirally. So if we go to Object and Blend and go to Blends Options, and this time we change it to the align to path, we get kind of a different effect. So this one aligns it to the page, and this one aligns it to the path. I think for this particular thing, it looks better aligned to the path, but in other situations, it might look better a different way. So we're going to try to apply this to text. Because I forgot to make a copy of this, I'm going to just back up a little bit before I apply it to my spine. And I'm going to make sure I make a duplicate of it, because when I replace the spine, it actually replaces the spine in this particular thing. So we need to kind of copy and paste each time we want to apply it to a different one. So in order to get this on text, I'm going to have to turn my text into a path. And so I'm going to start with going to my character panel. So go down to where it says type and character. And I'm going to get my text tool, and I am going to just say totally. All right, I'm going to make this text really big. Now, I'd love to do a script thing like this. It might be a little bit more difficult. So we'll actually put that to the side, and I can show you how to do that in a little bit. But the first thing we're going to do is a typeface that is just basic. It's going to be thin because we want to turn it into paths. There's lots of different ways you could do this. You could trace it with the pen tool. You could do it the way that I'm about to do it. So I'm going to choose the font Avenir. And oops, I have this on here. So we're going to choose Avenir. We're going to make sure that it's really light. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually go and turn this into, we're going to rasterize it, which means, if you remember, rasterize means turning into pixels. And so if I choose to do this, I'm actually making it an image. I'm going to use a low resolution because I'm not super concerned with that. You can see all the pixels all of a sudden. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to use that image trace option, because we can image trace a raster image. And I'm going to choose line art. So what that's going to do is very slowly trace over my letters to make them into lines. Now this isn't the prettiest, but we can go in there and fix it up. So I'm going to hit expand, and now I've got some line work to work with. So each one of these is individual. I'm going to object ungroup. And what I'll end up with is all these different lines. So what I can also do is I've got this smooth tool, right? It's underneath of the shaper tool. And when I have a path selected, I can kind of run my smooth tool along there, and any little blips that you might see will kind of be fixed. Whoops, I'm kind of making this worse. I can also go and get my curvature tool, and let's make this like a real circle. All right, so that one's fixed. We got some weird things going on here. I'm not so sure about this. I'm just gonna select that little guy and get rid of it. Whoops. L's are straight lines. I might leave these little kind of things bopping off the edge and see how that comes out when we actually apply this blend. So I'm going to start with the letter T, and I'm going to hold shift, select my blend, and go to object, blend, replace spine. All right, now object, I want to reverse the spine so that the thick part is at the top and the thin part is at the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing here. First I have to make a duplicate of this. I'm also not sure I really like the way when I'm zoomed out, because I think it has so many steps that I'm seeing this like edge right here. It's looking sort of pixelated. I think it's because it has too many steps. So I could try and go in here and go to blend options. Check out what this looks like versus this. I'm going to just put in here 500 and see if that smooths it out a little bit. Not really. All right, well, let's just keep going because the script font looks better and we want to get to that. So it also is to do with me going from thick to thin, which I totally just tried for the first time right now. So I'm selecting this and I'm selecting this, object, blend, replace spine, boom. I really don't like the way it's jagged like that. All right, I'm gonna keep going though. Select this, make a duplicate of it, select this, object, blend, replace spine. Interesting. I kind of like it though. Okay. Duplicate this, select this, object, blend, replace spine. Duplicate this, select this, object, blend, replace spine. Super tedious. Probably want to bring this in front. Object, arrange, bring forward. All right. Duplicate, select, object, blend, replace spine. Not sure if I'm enjoying, I like it here. Not sure if I'm really enjoying it here. We're going to keep going because you can always adjust it later. Object, blend, replace spine. Almost done. Object, blend, replace spine, and last one. Object, blend, replace spine. Okay, so there it is. Doesn't look too bad. We can still go in there if we wanted to and adjust the spine manually. So if I wanted to kind of like move this over or get in there with the curvature tool, maybe just get rid of that point completely, I can do that just to kind of even things out a little bit more. So that's how you do that. I really don't like, I feel like if I zoom in like a ton, I will have those smooth, like the smooth edges that I'm looking for. So it does come out that way. It's just that because I think we have so many steps that when you are zoomed out, it's looking very much choppy. Uh-oh, what happened to my Y? All right, so that's that. All right, so you could do the same thing with this scripty font, which looks pretty cool. I think though, for this, I'm gonna get rid of this blend and I'm gonna make a new one, a little bit thicker. And I think I'm just gonna do 2 colors here. And instead of 45 degrees, I think I'm gonna do 90 degrees. Those colors aren't different enough. Let's make this a little bit lighter. There Of course, I was not selected on the thing. All right, so I copy this, Alt and Shift so that I can keep it directly in line. I select this object, blend, make. This time I'm going to go into object, blend, blend options. I'm going to change this to 500 because I don't think it needs to be 1,000. And I'm also going to make sure that my orientation is aligned to page. I'm going to hit OK. For this, I am going to object, rasterize, screen is fine, OK. And then I'm going to my image trace and changing this to line art. And there we go. So this is like not ideal with the letter T and stuff like that. We can go in and fix that up. But I'm just gonna practice applying this so that you guys can see kind of what at least the T looks like. So we have to ungroup this object. Oh, what's happening? Oh, I forgot to expand it. So object, expand first, and we can just do the object, and then object, ungroup. Okay, and then I'm going to start with this. Oops, object, ungroup. I'm going to start with this top one. I've made a duplicate, so I'm holding down Shift and object, blend, replace spine. So at this point, you guys should be familiar with this particular. So here's a little bit of that line that I'm just going to get rid of. Again, I'm going to duplicate this, select that, object, blend, replace spine. So you start to get this kind of cool effect, and I think that the option of having like, see how the gradient kind of changes. If I were to change this and go to object, blend options, and change it to the orientation, I think that the orientation of align to page actually looks more interesting when you're applying this to text than the align to path. It's a little bit more interesting, the way the shadows go and all that kind of stuff. So again, like, I'm not entirely sure I love the color variation here. I feel like if it were like a little bit darker and a little bit lighter in the gradient, that we would have a more significant looking change. I can change this here. This is cool too, because actually if I change my first one to my last one, it's going to be completely different. So option, I'm going to just do the L here. And at this point, you guys have probably gotten the replace spine thing. But there's lots of things that you can do with like messing around with the colors and stuff like that. And so it gives you this cool effect. All right, so I hope that you find some fun in this and can use it somewhere.